Welcome back to the break. So before we go ahead and jump into the Reincarnation Trickstar's deck profile today, I do want to give a quick honorable mention to the World Championship qualifiers. It's getting ready to take place in Fort Worth, Texas. It's going to be June 29th through July 1st of this year, 2018. Trickstars have recently been picking up quite a bit of play with activity in a competitive background, and that's actually the reason why we're doing the rogue version of the Trickstar deck profile today. Jumping right into it, we're going to go ahead and play 3 copies of Trickstar Candina. It's a level 4 light fairy type Trickstar monster who has 1800 attack and 400 defense, and her effect is that when she is normal summoned, you can immediately add 1 Trickstar monster from your deck to your hand. In addition to this, each time that your opponent plays a spell or trap card, including field cards, they will immediately burn for 200 effect damage. Next up, we are playing 3 copies of Trickstar Lilybell. She is a level 2 light fairy type with 800 attack and 2000 defense. Her effect says that when she's added to hand, except by drawing her, you can go ahead and special summon her to the field. When this happens, she's able to attack directly, and when she does inflict direct damage to your opponent, you can target 1 Trickstar in your graveyard and you can add that target to your hand. In addition to this, what makes this card so wonderful is it can be paired well with Cardina and correspondence to go ahead and get a free special summon plus a pick from grave if it's not right out of the gate. Another honorable mention about this card is it is a level 2, but we'll get into why that's important here in a minute. Next up, we've got 3 copies of Trickstar Licorice. I call her Licorice, and the reason why is because she's strawberry red. Makes me think of Twizzlers, and I think Twizzlers are pretty damn awesome. In addition to that, she's a level 3 light fairy type who has 1600 attack and 1200 defense. Her effect is that it's actually a quick effect, which you can chain to your opponent's draws. Anytime that they add cards to their hand, you can quick effect target another Trickstar that you control on the field, return that target to your hand, and special summon Licorice in its place. When this happens, you get to go ahead and target 1 other Trickstar that was in your grave and add that target to your hand. And it's not a once per turn effect. Next up, we're playing 3 copies of Trickstar Narcissus. It is a level 4 light fairy type monster with 1000 attack and 1800 defense. This card's effect is so when your opponent takes effect damage, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. It's actually the reason why you want to play it at 3. This part of the effect is once per turn. However, the second effect for this card says that if your opponent activates a card's effect from hand and or their graveyard, for each time that they activate a card from their hand or from their graveyard, you inflict 200 damage to them. Next up is going to be 3 copies of Trickstar Mandrake. It's a level 2 light fairy type monster with 0 attack and 1000 defense. Most people are playing this at usually 1 or 2, but the reason why we're playing it at 3 is because of the first effect. It says that if it leaves the hand for any reason, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. The reason why this is important is you guys will see here in a little bit there's actually a tech that we're incorporating into this deck profile that specifically uses Mandrake's hand effect to be able to special itself back. Its secondary effect is if it's used as link material for a Trickstar monster, you can target a linked monster to an opponent's linked monster and destroy that target. So say for instance that they have something underneath like a firewall dragon or something else, you can target the monster that the Firewall Dragon that your opponent controls, and you can destroy that target that their Firewall points to. Next up, we have 2 copies of Trickstar Rideau, which is a level 4 light fairy type monster with 1600 attack and 1900 defense. And the reason why we're playing this card is because it's basically Monster Reborn for any Trickstar Link monster. This is once per turn, you can tribute this card to target one Link Trickstar monster in your graveyard, special summon that target. The secondary effect isn't as relevant, but it is still usable. Whenever your opponent were to banish a monster, you can go ahead and immediately inflict 200 damage to them because they banished a monster while this card's face up on the field. That second effect is a hard once per turn. Next up is the Orphan Child of the Trickstars. It's Dark Angel. We're playing 2 copies of this level 5 hand trap with 0 attack and 0 defense. It's a level 5 Dark Fairy type monster whose effect reads: whenever your opponent were to attack a Fairy type monster, you can immediately tribute that monster and this card from your hand to target another monster you control, and add whatever the attack deficit is between your opponent's attacking monsters and the first target that was targeted by this effect, and add that attack to the second target. So in short, you're making your opponent crash their own monster because of the level 5 hand trap. Next up, we're playing 2 copies of Herald of the Orange Light. The reason why we're playing this card is because its effect allows you to go ahead and target one other monster that's on your opponent's side of the field. When it activates its effect, you can tribute this card from the field and 1 card from your hand that happens to be fairy as well to negate the activation and destroy that card. This card's stats are 300 attack and 500 defense. It's also a level 2 light fairy type monster, and as I said earlier, the level 2s in this are very important, and we'll hear a little bit more about that when we get into the extra deck. Next up, we're playing 3 copies of Venue, the Bright Bird of Divinity. It's a level 8 ritual card with 2800 attack and 2000 defense. The reason why we're playing this card is because you can ritual summon it fairly easily by sending Trickstars from your hand to the grave by using the ritual spells. And the reason why we're actually playing this card is because of the very last effect, which says that if a monster is sent from your hand or field as cost by card effect, you can target those cards and add those back to your hand. So it helps you recycle materials, and it happens to be a big 2800 light fairy. And because we are playing Trickstars, we are going to be playing 3 copies of Trickstar Light Stage. And the reason why we're playing this card is because once per turn, you can go ahead and add a Trickstar monster from your deck to your hand. And if a Trickstar monster were to inflict battle damage or effect damage, you can inflict an additional 200 damage by effect damage because of this card. You can also target 1 spell or trap that your opponent controls, and until the end of the turn, it cannot be activated. And if it is going to be activated, it has to be activated at the end of the turn. If it is not activated by your opponent, then that card gets destroyed and you inflict 200 because it wasn't activated at the end of the damage step. Next up, we're playing 1 copy of Trickstar Light Arena, and the reason why we're playing this is a counter to Trickstar Light Stage. What this card does is once per turn, if you were to Link summon a Trickstar monster, you can target one of the materials that was used for the Link summon of a Trickstar Link monster, special summon it in defense position. Its effects are negated, and in addition to that, you can target 1 spell or trap that your opponent controls until the end of the turn. It cannot be activated, and if it is activated at the end of the damage step, then the effect will go off. However, they choose not to go ahead and activate the effect. It bounces that set spell and trap back to your opponent's hand. Next up, we're playing 3 copies of Trickstar Bouquet, and this is a spell speed 2 spell card that lets you go ahead and target one Trickstar that you control and one Trickstar in your hand and swap their positions. You can target the one on field and bounce it to your hand, and the one from hand and bounce it to the field. In addition to the Trickstars changing places, the one that's targeted on field gives attack to the one that's being special from your hand to the field. So this will help you go ahead and swing over problematic monsters, and in addition to that, give you a little bit more pressure on board. Next up, we're playing 2 copies of Primal Cry. This is the ritual card for Venue the Bright Bird of Divinity. The reason why we're playing only 2 copies of this, as will be explained here in a moment. What's important about this card, besides it just being the ritual spell, is once per turn, during the same turn that a ritual monster would be summoned, if for some reason they were to strike it, you can actually banish this from your graveyard and special summon that ritual monster, and you don't actually have to pay the cost the second time for the levels, which is why it's important that you play 2 copies of Primal Cry. Next up, we have 1 copy of Sprite's Blessing, which will be used to summon the final copy of Venue Bright Bird of Divinity. The reason why you're not actually playing 3 copies of the Primal Cry is because this is an alternative way to go ahead and get into it without having the secondary banish effect. You don't really need it 3 times, so it's perfectly fine to go ahead and play just 1 copy of Sprite's Blessing along with the 2 copies of Primal Cry. We are playing 2 copies of Pre-Preparation or Rites, and what this card does is just says to go ahead and add 1 ritual monster along with the ritual spell that goes with that ritual monster whose name's written in the text, which is why we're playing the 2 Primal Cries along with the 3 copies of the Venue Bright Bird of Divinity. And we are playing 1 copy of Monster Reborn because it is legal to play at 1. It's just a free special summon from you or your opponent's graveyard, and this can only be activated the 1 time because you can only play 1. Next up, we do have 1 Monster Reincarnation, and the reason why we're playing this is because it's channelable with Trickstar Mandrake. What you do is you discard 1 card and then target 1 card in your graveyard and add that target back to your hand. Next up, we're playing, to round off the spells, Different Dimension Reincarnation. What this card does is it targets a banished monster, and you can special summon that target. It's basically like Call of the Haunted as far as an equip goes, but when that monster dies, so does this card. Next up, we are playing 3 copies of Trickstar Reincarnation. What this card does is you can banish your opponent's entire hand, and then they draw the same number of cards that you just banished by this effect. And once per turn, except the turn that this was sent to graveyard, you can banish this card to target 1 Trickstar in your graveyard and special summon that target. So it's Monster Reborn for Trickstars. Next up, we are playing 2 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole, and the reason why we're playing this is to get rid of problematic cards. Whenever a monster would be summoned, excluding linked monsters because they can't go face down defense, you would flip that monster face down defense, excluding linked monsters, and basically when they're face down defense, they can't be flipped up for any reason by the effect of this card. Finally, to wrap up the traps, we are playing 1 copy of World Legacy Awakens, and what this card is it's a trap card that you chain at the end of your opponent's turn to go ahead and get a free link summon, because what it says is you just link summon a monster using monsters you control as materials. And this doesn't forego the actual requirements for the link monsters, but most of the time you're just going to be linking into Trickstars anyways, and because this is a Trickstar deck profile, you shouldn't ever run into an issue where this isn't usable. For the first extra deck monster, we are playing Herald of Pure Light. It's a rank 2 Xyz monster. It just requires 2 level 2 monsters to special summon this from the extra deck. Its effect is that you can target 1 monster in your graveyard, add that target to your hand, and then add one target from your hand to your deck, and then shuffle your deck. The reason why you're doing this is to help you recycle materials, and it's easy to get into with your level 2s. Next up is our first or last synchro of the deck, which is Ancient Sacred Wyvern. It is a light level 7 fairy type with 2100 attack and 2000 defense. Its effect reads that as long as your life points are higher than your opponent's, it gains attack equal to the difference between your and your opponent's life points, and once per turn, if this card were to be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can immediately pay 1000 life points and special summon this from graveyard. Because the links are a thing, this will immediately go to a link zone that your link monster points to, or to a main monster zone if you don't already have a link monster. For our first link monster deck, we have a Link 1 Trickstar called Trickstar Bloom. It is a link monster that's link rating 1 that has 100 attack, and its effect says that if you control a face-up Trickstar monster that this card points to, you can chain an effect to go ahead and force your opponent to draw one card, and then immediately burn them for every card in their hand times 200. The first Link 2 of the deck is going to be Trickstar Black Catbat. It's a Link 2 monster with 2000 attack, and its effect reads that if a Trickstar monster inflicts damage to your opponent by a card effect, you can immediately inflict 200 more damage to them. And if a Trickstar monster or a Link monster that this card points to is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can make all monsters that your opponent controls lose 200 attack and defense for each monster that this card points to. Next up is going to be Trickstar Crimson Heart, and what this card is a Link 2 Trickstar monster with arrows that point to the down corner arrow and to the side. And what this card does is, once per turn, you can go ahead and discard one Trickstar from your hand to the graveyard, and if you do this, while your life points are higher than your opponent's, both you and your opponent each draw one card. If you do this while your life points are lower than your opponent draws one card, but you get to draw two. Next up is going to be Trickstar Holly Angel. Its arrows point down to both the corners at the bottom of the card. What this card's effect is if your opponent takes effect damage by a Trickstar monster's card effect, then this monster gains attack equal to that damage that your opponent took until the end of the turn, and also monsters that this card points to cannot be destroyed by battle and or card effect. Next up is our first Link 3 of the deck. It is Trickstar Delphinium. It has 200 attack, 200 defense, and it has the same link arrows that Deco Talker has. Once per turn, when this card declares an attack and is pointing to a Trickstar monster, you can target monsters that are Trickstar up to the number of Trickstars that this card points to that are banished, and either add those targets to your hand if they're main deck monsters, and if they're extra deck monsters, bounce them back to the extra deck. And it also gains 1000 attack for each of those monsters. And finally, to wrap this up, we've got 2 copies of Trickstar Bella Madonna. It's my favorite Trickstar as far as the extra deck Trickstars go. While this card has no monsters that it points to, it is completely unaffected by other card effects, not just monsters, but spells and traps as well. And in addition to that, once per turn, you can target up to the number of Trickstars that are in your graveyard and inflict to your opponent effect damage equal to the number of Trickstars in your grave times 200. It is a hard once per turn on that effect damage. Alright, and that is what we actually do have for the Trickstar Reincarnation deck profile today. Real quick before we go ahead and wrap everything up, I do want to go ahead and give you guys a quick shout out for those of you that are going to the World Championship qualifiers. Again, it's going from June the 19th to July the 1st of 2018 out in Texas. So good luck to you guys. Make sure to hit that like button for those of you on Facebook. Hit the subscribe bell for more notifications for more Break Duelist videos in the future. And we appreciate the support for the page and the channel. We will see you guys in the next break.